For several weeks the man suffered from mysterious bites that appeared every morning, leaving his skin red and uncontrollably itchy. He thought it was a common bedbug infestation, but when doctors finally discovered the truth, the horrifying discovery left everyone in shock. For several weeks, John lived as if in a nightmare. Every morning he woke up with new red spots on his arms, neck and torso. The itching was almost unbearable, and was a constant reminder that something had been crawling on his skin during the night. He tried everything, including washing the sheets in hot water, vacuuming every corner, spraying over-the-counter insecticides. However, the bites continued to appear, and he was sure that they were bedbugs. What else could it be? After another sleepless night, John stood by his bed, staring at the mattress as if it were an enemy. He slowly pulled back the sheets, looking for the slightest sign of movement. Nothing happened. No tiny insects, no bloodstains, no shed skin. It drove him crazy. He began doing research on the internet, hoping to confirm his suspicions. Every search led to the same culprit, a bedbug. Of the recommended methods of detecting them, such as inspecting mattresses, checking seams on furniture, setting traps, nothing helped. If it were bedbugs, he would have found some evidence by now. One night, in a desperate attempt to catch them in the act, John set up his phone camera to film his bed while he slept. He positioned it carefully, making sure his pillow and everything around it were clearly visible. He went to bed feeling awkward but determined. The next morning he reviewed the footage. For the first few hours nothing happened, but around 3 a.m. he noticed something strange. His blanket shifted slightly, as if something was moving underneath it. He couldn't make out any outlines, only a vague ripple. But when he stopped and zoomed in, he saw no insects, no bugs, nothing recognizable. Just an uneasy feeling that there really is something there, just too small or too fast to see. That same day, John called the disinfection company. He needed professionals. When the specialist, a middle-aged man named Anders, arrived, he listened patiently as John described the problem. Anders nodded thoughtfully, making notes on his notepad, then put on gloves and began a methodical inspection of the bedroom. He shined a flashlight along every seam of the mattress, disassembled the bed frame, looked behind the headboard along the baseboards, and even examined the rugs. An hour later, Anders shook his head. "I don't find any signs of bedbugs," he said, frowning in confusion. "Are you sure the bites happen at night?" John Vo. "Yes, I wake up with fresh wounds almost every morning. They itch terribly. They look like bedbug bites. What else could it be?" Anders Vo. Anders sighed and raised his hand to scratch his jaw. "I don't know, sometimes people mistake bites from other insects for bedbug bites. It could be fleas. Do you have any pets?" John Vo. "No," John said, disappointment evident in his voice. "I live alone." "There are no pets? I haven't been out recently. Just these bites that just won't go away." Anders looked at him sympathetically. "I could set up some professional traps, see if we catch anything. If you don't mind, I'll leave them overnight and come back tomorrow." Narrator Vo. John agreed. He felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Anders' traps will confirm the presence of bedbugs and they can get rid of them. That night he tried to sleep again, knowing that the traps were set, but the itching, as always, returned. The next day Anders returned and checked his traps. He shook his head in bewilderment. "Anders Vo. Not a single catch. These traps are specially designed to attract bedbugs. If they were here, we would have seen at least one by now." He stared at John, raising his eyebrows. "I might recommend you see a dermatologist. It may be a skin condition that resembles insect bites." Narrator Vo. John's shoulders slumped. The last thing he wanted was another dead end. But he made an appointment. Dermatologist Dr. Harry examined the bite sites, took a biopsy of one inflamed area, and promised to report the results. In the meantime, he prescribed a cream to relieve the itching. For a brief moment, John thought that perhaps it was all in his head. But the marks were so clear and the nighttime itching was unmistakable. He returned home in a bad mood. He wanted to try the cream, wait for the test results and see if the bites would remain. By the time Dr. Harry called him back, he had new bites on his wrist and under his arm. The dermatologist's voice on the phone sounded cautious. Your biopsy showed an inflammatory reaction typical of insect bites. There's no indication that this is caused by a dermatological disease. Something's biting you, John. He felt a chill. Then why can't anyone find them? There was a pause. I would like to recommend you an entomologist, a specialist in insect identification. I know this sounds unusual, but we may be dealing with something less common than bedbugs. I have a colleague who occasionally consults on arcane medical cases like this. If you don't mind, I can set up an appointment, Dr. Harry suggested. John agreed, although the idea that his problem was so unusual that it required the involvement of a specialist made him uneasy. A week later, he met with Dr. Chang, an entomologist known for his consultations on rare cases. Dr. Chang greeted him in a calm, reassuring tone. I understand you've been through a difficult ordeal, he said, looking over the notes Dr. Harry had sent. Are you sure this only happens in your home? John nodded. I never get new bites when I stay overnight at my parents' house, or even when I stay overnight at friends' houses. This only happens in my bedroom. Dr. Chang tilted his head intriguedly. This suggests that the source is localized. If it's not bedbugs, it could be something else entirely. Let's take a close look at the environment in which you sleep. He took out a small kit, which included magnifying lenses, test tubes, and microscope slides. Back at John's apartment, Dr. Chang slowly and methodically examined the mattress, bedding and frame using a headlamp and magnifying glass. He took small samples of dust and fibres from the mattress seams and carefully sealed them in vials. He even collected some of the wooden bed frame into a sample bag. Throughout the entire process he spoke very little, only nodding from time to time. John watched him carefully. He noticed that Dr. Chang tensed slightly. This happened when the entomologist lifted the corner of the mattress and examined its underside. Dr. Chang frowned and brought the magnifying glass closer, then quickly took a sample. His face was blank, but John felt that something had been found. John asked, his voice sounding more urgent than he intended, "Did you see something?" Dr. Chang pursed his lips. "I'm not quite sure. I noticed something unusual. I need to analyze the samples under a microscope. Let's not jump to conclusions just yet." John's heart sank. Another wait, another night of uncertainty. But he understood the need for thoroughness. Dr. Chang left with his samples, promising to call as soon as he had any answers. That night, John left his bedroom for the relative safety of the living room sofa. He covered himself with freshly washed blankets, clinging to the hope that being away from the bed would make him feel better. But when he woke up, his heart sank. New bites and red welts appeared on the ankle. His stomach twisted as he rubbed the irritated skin, and it dawned on him. Whatever it was, it spread. It wasn't limited to his bed. He felt that it was unstoppable. While he was thinking about what to do next, his phone rang. John grabbed the phone. It was Dr. Chang. His voice on the line was sharp and urgent. Dr. Chang said, "John, I need you to come to my lab immediately." The urgency in his tone made John's stomach twist. John asked barely audibly, "Is everything bad?" Dr. Chang replied, "I'll explain everything when you arrive." On the way to the lab, John was thinking feverishly. His palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, and his mind was running through the worst-case scenarios. By the time he entered the small, sterile laboratory, his nerves were on edge. Dr. Chang greeted him with a short nod, his expression unusually grim. He pointed to the table where a small cup stood under a powerful microscope. Dr. Chang said, "These are samples we took from your mattress. See for yourself what we found." John leaned over, squinting through the eyepiece. When he realized what he was looking at, he screamed. At first John saw what looked like dusty ditches and fabric fibres. Then he noticed tiny figures of creatures smaller than the head of a pin. They had long, thin bodies and several pairs of legs. They were not round and reddish like bedbugs. They were thin and fast, almost worm-like in appearance, with tiny limbs. John pulled away, his voice barely audible. "What is this?" Dr. Chang leaned closer to the container, his brows furrowed in concentration. He adjusted his glasses, his voice quiet and deliberate. "We've identified the species," he began. his tone leaving no room for doubt. "It's called Triatoma infestans." John's heart sank. "What is this?" Dr. Chang explained that it is a parasite commonly found in South America. They are known for their aggressive feeding habits and ability to adapt to their environment. They feed on body fluids, and their bites are similar to bedbugs. John felt a tightness in his chest. "How dangerous are they?" Dr. Chang's voice was firm. "Very. They can cause severe skin infections, allergic reactions, and even secondary diseases that can be transmitted through their saliva. They don't just bite you, they nest and breed in the cracks of your bed frame, perhaps even in the walls. Every night they emerge to feed. They are almost invisible to the naked eye, and their bites mimic the reaction of bedbugs. That's why everyone was fooled." John felt a wave of nausea. "But how did they get here?" he asked, trying his best to remain calm. Dr. Chang shook his head. "It could have been related to imported furniture or a package delivered from overseas. Sometimes these organisms hitchhike with cargo. But we need to act quickly. I'm going to call in a specialized team." Later that evening, John stood in the corner of his living room when a small group of experts in protective gear entered his bedroom. Dr. Chang watched them from the hallway, pointing to where he had taken samples. The team managed to destroy most of the colony using a combination of methods including intense heat treatment and a specialized solution imported from an advanced research lab. It was a painstaking and anxious process, but in the end they declared the infestation clear. When John finally returned to his apartment, he felt like he was in a new place. The bed was replaced, the walls were repaired, all surfaces were sterilized. Now everything was safe. A week later, John met with Dr. Chang in the lab for a final interview. He explained that the creatures had likely been brought in through imported furniture that John had bought at a discount warehouse a few months earlier. The larvae adapted to human living conditions, multiplied quickly, and fed on him every night. It was a new type of parasite that would now alert experts around the world. There may be changes in the inspection procedures for certain imported goods. Dear viewers, what do you think about this story? Please tell us in the comments, and if you like this video, then like it and subscribe to our channel. Goodbye.